So today I'm having an interview with Nate LaGrange. Nate is one of the newest staff with Life Impact Ministries. And Nate, you want to tell us a little bit about your background?
Absolutely. I am a Hoosier, just like yourself, which makes us incredible and joined at the hip already. But we were a part of the staff church-wise. We've been lead pastors, worship leaders, college pastors, janitors, all that stuff for probably about 20 years now. Our last church that we pastored was here in downtown Indianapolis, in the United States, in Los Estados Unidos. But yeah, we pastored down there for about 10 years and then resigned in 2018, took a full year off, which was awesome, most incredible thing that we've done. And then through that, really discovered Life Impact and have been pursuing that since about fall, winter of 2019.
So you want to walk through a little bit about your interest in member care, or what kind of turned you on to the idea that that was something that was needed?
I wasn't raised in necessarily an overtly Christian home, and the faith tradition that we were in, you didn't have a lot of access, to reading scripture yourself or anything like that. And so when I came into Christianity and came into the more broader evangelical church, I think right away I started to notice a little bit of like people are different on the platform than they are off the platform. And it just kind of was like, okay, what's going on here? And as the Lord kind of moved Trish and I into ministry ourselves, we just started to see a lot of people that just put on the good face. I mean, it's kind of a no-brainer. They smile, hey, brother, how you doing? That kind of thing. And you're like, yeah, I'm pretty sure your life is falling apart. And it became like church was not a place you could be yourself. And we saw that toll happening on the leaders most of all. And so we didn't see a lot of vulnerability with leadership. We didn't see this kind of thing. And so we kind of, made a pact with ourselves like, hey, let's not ever do that. Well, when you get into senior leadership, you're like, oh, now I see why people do that. Because if you are vulnerable, they'll eat you alive. If you're not vulnerable enough, they want you to be vulnerable. But we started to see, good friends, good family that were in ministry come over to the house and just begin to share and unburden their hearts. And we'd ask them like, have you talked to anybody about this? Oh, no. And it's just, we're like, well, how are you ever going to get healed? How's there ever going to be, reconciliation, or how's there going to be redemption in this if you can't talk to somebody? So we started to kind of become those people that you talk to. But I think when it really hit us the most was we kind of went through a season of just some really traumatic events and some really big transition. We left our church that we were at to come downtown and plant, and that was a difficult transition. A lot of friends and family we had to leave at that church to even come down into here. We adopted internationally from the Philippines, and I'm going to tell you right now, people who adopt, you're my heroes. Like, that is not for the faint of heart. I used to just think that was going to be easy and we'll just love everybody. Okay, that's a whole nother story unto itself. So we adopted we planted the church in 2009. We moved downtown in 2010. We adopted in 2012. And then my wife lost both of her parents back to back in 2013. Oh, wow. And our hearts were just done. And actually, Trisha looked at me one day, shortly after both of her parents had passed, and she was just like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And we ended up escaping to Europe with our 4 kids and just healing over a good period of time. Other staff took care of the church here, and we just started to realize, man, what like a change of perspective was so needed, and to be in a different space was so great. But what if we could have like a face that came along with that space too? What if there was somebody there that could walk us through the things we were feeling? So that was like cemented then in our hearts. About 2014, 2015 is when we kind of came back and we're like, we need to like pray and think on this more, because this is something that's so necessary and needed. There's your long answer.
So at that point, did you realize that member care was a thing, or did you think that you were kind of coming up with an idea?
We knew a couple of spaces that were here in Indiana, and then we knew of some other places that were around the United States that offered, care to pastors, missionaries, et cetera. We didn't know anything about member care. I don't think we would have even used that terminology. And we thought, well, we'll just open our own retreat space. We'll open something that, is inviting to people. We've had folks that have gifted us their home and it's great for retreat stuff. But I don't think we really understood member care until we started to kind of on board with Life Impact. And we're like, oh, there's a whole another world of people that are kind of the undergirding of this thing, the hobbits, so to speak, that are helping the others kind of go forward. And we're like, wow, this is incredible.
A lot of people haven't necessarily heard of member care, and kind of walk me through member care as you see it.
Yeah, I think member care, as I see it, is just coming along and helping to refresh those that, as we understand it, that go out and help refresh others. The folks that are, your pastors, your missionaries, your Christian leaders, your Christian workers, the men and women that are out in the field that may not have the opportunity to be as intentionally discipled as the very people that they're intentionally discipling. And so we were like, what's it look like to be kind of the hands that are supporting the people who are doing work? And I think that's where, the idea of member care came into play. We've seen things from Harry Hoffman, and we've grown through what he's offered. And we began some different things with, I think, Light University and some mental health coaching and counseling. And we're like, man, this is just so needed for the people who are normally pouring out, who's pouring in. So, yeah,
it's totally true what you mentioned about the people that came to your house, how they were not able to really share those types of things with people, really feel like there was anyone they could connect with on a level just because they were up in such a position.
Yeah, and I think we, I think especially in our American society, and I know this is true in other countries as well. We put people on a platform. They're literally 6 or 10 feet higher than us physically, and so we get this misconception about who they are and what their life is like, and the fact that they have no struggles and their marriage is perfect, and their kids are great. But it's like, no, in reality, we all know that's not true. I mean, PKs and MKs, come on, you got missionary kids running around where you're like, gosh, I hope they're not, your traditional MKs. And, I've got pastor kids, PKs running around. And historically, those are like some pretty messed up people. Yeah. And you almost have to go, okay, why? What is the perception? And the perception is people on platforms have it all figured out, that their lives are fine. And when they start to feed into that same mentality, then when they do have a struggle, if they have an addiction or if they have a struggle or a challenge in their own life, they're not telling anybody. They might as well just keep it secret. And so I think for me, I began to realize there are two things I think at play here. I think the fact that people they don't have a place where they can go with their vulnerabilities. And then 2, the speed, especially of our North American culture and true of the rest of the world, the speed at which people go doesn't allow them to almost pull off at a rest stop and just have some kind of vulnerable conversation or just sit and be for a minute. And so I think those 2 things, lack of vulnerability and speed, I'm looking at all of our leaders going, you're headed for destruction. This is the logical conclusion of your life. I mean, people like you're like, we want to help. We've seen folks that are here, in our city, men and women that were very well-intentioned and had great vision and great dreams. And I would say we're operating in the Holy Spirit, and we're moving and great things were happening. Sure. And you just watch this logical progression of lack of rest, lack of a vulnerable space to be themselves. And then they almost started to, kind of buy their own news and started to become better than everybody else. And now all of a sudden they've distanced themselves from anything that could help. Yes. And they fell, and it was a bloody massacre falling. It's the ripple effect is just, I take no joy in saying that. It's just the ripple effect is massive. Their congregations or their, constituency with their not-for-profit organization are decimated. The trust level in those people starts to just tank. And a lot of those folks that are like, I'm not having anything to do with this ever again.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like,
Exactly.
well, okay, wait. It's like, if the leader's unhealthy, the whole place is unhealthy. If the leader's healthy, there might be a good chance that the whole place could literally feed off of that health, off of that rhythm, off of that vulnerability. So we're like, where, it's almost like, if there's going to be a flood coming, where would you stick your finger in the dike? Well, I'd stick it right there. If we could take care of the leader, then maybe, just maybe, and it's not always a perfect thing, the recent discoveries that have been made about Ravi Zacharias. I benefited greatly from Ravi's ministry, and I feel like I grew, and all these awful revelations are coming out now. If Ravi could go to Ben and Krista's place and get refreshing, would he have maybe not made those decisions? If he could get help somewhere, would he maybe, I don't know. I mean, we can't answer that question, but I can guarantee you this: if he doesn't go to those places, he's going to make this kind of decision.
Yeah, that's a great point.
It's just, I mean,
so
it's
well
like,
said.
It's kind of duh. It's like, okay, so if I eat a bunch of junk and I don't work out, you're telling me that I'm going to get overweight and sluggish and maybe a detriment to my health? Yes. Like, that's kind of a foregone conclusion. So you're telling me if I kick myself up on a platform and I never have an intimate conversation with anybody, and then I keep at a pace that literally causes a breakneck speed, and I never interact with my wife or kids, you're telling me that there may be a problem later on? Yes. Duh. It's like, it's not funny. It's just comical that people keep doing the same thing. Think of all the recent fallings that we've seen lately. And again, I take no joy in it. You're just like, yeah, that makes sense. You run at that pace and you run without some kind of accountability, you're dead. I hate to say it, but it's like, I think for you guys, for Life Impact, for other organizations like that, it's like, we're here. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
We don't just leave it at that, like, well, you're dead. We're like, no, you can come back to life. Like, you can be revived, you can be refreshed, you can be renewed, you can, like it says above your head, you can get new strength. I know enough Spanish to know that, but it's like, you can get new strength when you stop, which is counterintuitive.
Yeah, I just wish that message would get out more. I wish more people were, in tune with what was going on the member care side of things. And let's pivot over a little bit. But I want to kind of get the story as to like how you heard of Life Impact and what the process you and your wife went through. Was it just like, boom, sold? Or was it like, well, let's pray about this or anything like that? So kind of walk us through that, if you would.
Yeah. So when we were in Europe back in 2014, when we returned home, I'm always looking for good deals, and I'm always looking for, what's a place you can stay that's going to be inexpensive, et cetera. And as we were thinking about that, we were thinking about, are there any kind of retreat type spaces in Italy? And that was specifically one of the places that we just kind of fell in love with. So I found some great monastic type of traditions, and we found some kind of off the wall, new agey type stuff around there. And yet kind of in the middle was this, what was called an oasis called the Oaks. And I just shot an email off like, hey, this is who we are, blah, blah, blah. I don't even think it gave basically a description of where this was located, but come to find out after some corresponding emails that we had been like 10 minutes away from where this place is. And it's kind of in a rural setting. Like, you'd have to know where it is to know where it is. And so I was like, oh yeah, I know the supermarket that's there, and I know the all the places that are right in the spot. And so we just kind of kept some of that up. And I think at that time she may have handed me off to somebody else, but it didn't, like, we never were able to connect. So we just kind of put that down. She said, if you ever come back to Italy, let me know, and we'll try to make something happen. Well, fast forward, when we took a year off, part of, we were going to rest for a little bit in this year off, and then we wanted to do some travel. My wife and I, we love to travel. So one of the places we wanted to go back was Italy. So I reconnected with her and just told her, hey, this is something we're looking at doing. Because we talked to you about it. She said, well, if you're really looking at doing this, you should contact my director. And we're like, you have a director? And she said, oh yeah, he's stateside. He's over off the West Coast. And I'm like, well, heck yeah. So it ended up in, I think, January or February of 2019. We finally made the kind of Zoom connection. Although I think it was probably Skype back then, but we made the connection with David, and I think Teresa even popped in a little bit. And after we got done with the call, we're like, this is ridiculous. Like, they are doing everything that we want to do, and they've been doing it for 20 years, and we should align ourselves with them. However, I thought what was really interesting about David was I'd asked him a couple of questions, and he said, I don't know. I think that would be best answered by some of our hosts that are scattered around the world. And he said, why don't you just connect with them? And he sent me like a big directory. And I think we actually ended up connecting. I remember our internet was really bad. And we connect. I'm like, wait, they're in Costa Rica and their internet's great. And I'm here and this is not working. But we ended up connecting with you and with darn near all of the staff.
Yes.
And we just kept hearing from everybody, this is a great organization. People were very honest with the standard, like, well, we're having some growing pains, and there's some organizational things that are continuing to grow and be shored up. And so everybody was really honest. And we're like, these are some cool people doing some incredible work. Like, why would we reinvent the wheel? Why don't we just ask them, it'd be an honor to join you in what you guys do. So yeah, that was that.
Where are you guys at now with the process of opening your Oasis?
Yeah, so it's been a very long process for us. We identified we really like to move from Indiana and down south. Part of that so that we could have an Oasis open a little bit longer than you could here. We live in downtown Indianapolis. This is not refreshing or restful under any circumstance. Like, it's Central Avenue. That's where we live, which is, just like its name. But I think we looked at Georgia. We found a great space there. Great story with that. Some people are holding their house while we are waiting for ours to sell. And it's been a long process. So we're waiting for our home to sell. As soon as it sells, hopefully we'll be able to go down and purchase the home that we picked out. It's on a lake just northeast of Atlanta. So about an hour or so away from Hartsfield-Jackson, which is the world's busiest airport. And a couple of missions organizations, some different not-for-profits that are there right in the area, and obviously a lot of churches because it is the South. But so we're doing our partnership development, doing our fundraising, and I think with some gifts from last year all accumulating, we're about at 96% of our fundraising based on last year. We still got to grow our monthly base and stuff like that. So yeah, that's where we are. We've taken a ton of coaching classes and fundraising classes and mental health class. I'm classed out. I'm like, okay, ready to go deposit this into somebody else. So yeah.
Sure. How can people contact you if they'd like to, reach out, note of encouragement or anything like that?
Yeah, for sure. I'm blessed enough to have children that actually understand technology. So we actually have a website called refreshingtherefreshers.org. And it's got all of our contact information on there. Just kind of follows after that. Those that refresh others will themselves be refreshed. So so they can check us out at refreshingtherefreshers.org. There's some videos on there and some different stuff like that. So.
Last question. Is there anything that came to your mind while we were talking? Anything else you'd like to share? Anything that's been on your heart?
Well, I think what you guys do on an international basis, I think as we kind of step back and we're here, stateside, obviously, I think what you guys are doing on an international basis has to continually be propped up's the wrong word, but elevated to the standpoint that says this is available, because I know so many cross-cultural workers, so many men and women that have left everything that they know to go down and minister to people in a totally different environment. I think the loneliness, the isolation, we're just now starting to feel some of that here because of COVID, because of some of the unrest, that's going on in our country. So we're just starting to feel some of that isolation and loneliness here that I feel like missionary workers have been feeling for a really long time.
That's true.
And so,
That's true.
hats off to what you guys do, and again, the opportunity that you guys have to be a safe space, to be almost a friend for people who may be absolutely friendless because they've moved down into a totally different space and have poured themselves into the work and have not built relationships and friendships where they can be vulnerable. So yeah, even as we're talking, I'm like, wow, it's just an incredibly needed thing all around the world. And obviously now in the United States in ever increasing measure.